I'm Kevin, and in this episode, we're joined by Ben Stewart from Alberta, Canada. Thank you very much for your time. How long have you run your own business for? Take me back to where it all began.
It began up north in the Northwest Territories. I was working up at a mine, got sick of that. I operated equipment for 4 years and then decided to be a mechanic. I got hit in the head or something. And I started pulling wrenches in Alberta because there's a local college here. I was apprentice for 4 years. Worked at various outfits around here and then bought my own service truck. I got laid off from a job on a Saturday morning because the boss was drunk. So I took my severance and rigged up a truck and buggered off on my own.
Wow. Okay, so how old are you then?
42.
Okay, I'm 43. So tell me, what inspired you to become a mechanic? You said you started as an operator, it sounds, right? How old were you when you first picked up your first wrench and attempted to fix something?
22 years old. I started out in an ag dealership and I started washing equipment there as a first-year apprentice and doing small electrical stuff. And then I got my first year and went to work for a local concrete outfit. Did that for a while. And my second year, and then I went out in the bush fixing mulchers. I did a year of that. And then I came back home after putting 1,000K on a service truck in 10 months. And then I managed 35 trucks for 3 years. I bought my own service truck after that.
You managed 35 trucks?
Yeah, 35 trucks and trailers hauling crude oil.
Wow. Are you in charge of the fleet, doing truck maintenance?
I did everything from, I didn't do engines and transmissions, but rig ups and tank repairs and valves and just managing the basic maintenance of it. And then it got to be too much, so they hired one guy, just me and another guy, for 3 years doing that.
Cool. So you made a decision?
Yes. So I had a little half-ton Dodge pickup when I worked there, two-wheel drive, and I put boxes on the side of it, and I'd go help the outfit. Somebody would have a flat tire on the side of the road or blow a PTO or something stupid, right? You'd go fix them up. And then due to my experience with the mulching outfit, right?
Yeah.
Bush mechanic stuff. After that, I bought my service truck.
Wow. And that's what you're currently doing now then?
I'm mostly doing tank inspections, so B620 crude haulers.
Okay.
So I do inspections and repairs on them with a guy out of Edmonton. I don't know how familiar you are with aluminum, but it tends to crack and work harden, right? These things do bust apart or corrode or whatever, so we cut the walls out of them and replace ribs, and they roll them over, so we have to change ladders, re-inspect them, and put them on the road. Broken frames is another one. Yeah, they split the frames underneath on the B trains.
Wow.
Since October of last year, I've pretty much only been welding.
Wow.
I've done 2-3 cat projects and a couple clutches, but I have spent 90% of my time welding aluminum and stainless. So TIG, stick, MIG, various processes with various different kinds of metals. I do cast repairs, anything weird that nobody else wants to touch.
It seems like you've carved out quite the niche for yourself.
I sent you a picture of the service truck, right?
Yeah.
It's fairly large. There's a 400 Vantage tucked in there, completely rigged, VMAC air. There's a hose press. I can press hoses up to 1.25 inch on site. All the fittings in there, like cat flange and GIC ORS. 8-ton picker on the back. So that helps me out with these tank repairs, like the quad wagons. So they have a turntable at the front. So we replace them and refurbish the mounts, because by the time they come to me, they're all cracked out and stuff. So you got to lift the tank and pull the under chassis out from underneath and refurbish everything.
So at what point in the lifespan of a new tank on a truck, just say, does it need to be refurbished or inspected? Is it presumably they need to be inspected on a regular basis?
Every year.
Every year.
Every year they need some sort of an inspection, and the inspection gets more in depth. Like, so crude hauler is a 407 spec, which is sour sealed. Every 5 years they get a thickness inspection. I got an ultrasonic thickness tester for testing the thickness of the shell of the tank. It
Wow.
has to be gauged. And you have to use the special meter approved by DOT Canada that goes through paint and liners and things like that, because guys will try to cheat and build up their liner, right? Well, that really doesn't do them no good.
Wow.
And then your vac trucks, because I'm right in the heart of the oil patch. Like, we're right in the middle of the oil patch here. So then your vac trucks they call them acid service. So then they're every 6 months, they need an inspection of some kind.
How many manufacturers of tanks are there?
Lots. There's probably 20 different manufacturers of tanks in North America. But then the thing that's common to all of them is that there's only like 3 or 4 valve manufacturers.
Okay.
So Betts being one of them, Keystone another. It's all the same, right? You're probably more used to cats and hose, right? So you can either have the Burko undercarriage or you can have the cat undercarriage.
Okay, got it.
And whether you have a Komatsu or a cat or whatever, there's only three different kinds of undercarriage you can put on it, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess my question is, of all the manufacturers, presumably there's some that are good, better, best. And the other thing is, from when they're new, how quickly do they start failing, and what are the conditions in which they fail more quickly than others?
So from new, you'll get 10 to 15 years out of your tank without having to do anything major in it. And that's providing that you don't haul anything corrosive, or the worst one is abrasive. So the fluids that we're hauling up here, guys will say, oh, I'm hauling produced water, no big deal. Produced water is a high salt content, up to 15% salt. The problem with that is now it's going to sit in the tank, and then it's a saturated solution. So then you start throwing it through your piping, and it's actually, the salt isn't completely dissolved. So it abrades, it erodes the piping inside your tank.
It's not so much the tank as it is the piping around it?
And the tank as well. It's a way different industry than like moving dirt or logging. Like there's some really neat stuff that happens there, like flowback, for example. So they go fracking. I'm sure you've heard of that a little bit.
Yeah.
So they stimulate a well, they frack it, and then sometimes they'll use acids to do that. And then so then this fluid comes back out of the well. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. It has to go somewhere. Now, you can't just dump that in a river somewhere. So it has to be hauled back to a disposal well or a treatment center of some kind in a tank.
Okay.
So guys will buy a stainless tank. Oh, I'm good to go. Stainless is great, but your wear limits on stainless are extremely small. Like you're talking 1/2 to 3/4 of a mil that you're allowed to wear on that tank. And stainless does get eaten away. Everybody, oh, like stainless, yeah, it'll never eat away. Yeah, it does.
Yeah, wow.
It's a really neat industry.
That's really cool. How did you come to learn about that as being a service that needs to be offered? Did someone say, hey, man, I'm doing these inspections, you should come and do that too? Or inspections and repairs, right?
I started welding fenders. Aluminum fenders is how I started.
Okay.
And then they're like, oh, you can weld this aluminum fender. I'm like, yeah. Can you fix my fuel tank? I poked a hole through like a logger. My first one was actually a logger. He poked a hole through his fuel tank in the middle of the night, and he's like, I got to go. I got these loads to haul. Can you weld aluminum? I'm like, yeah, I can. Fixed his fuel tank, and then local crude hauling outfit, hey, I got a problem inside my tank. You can weld aluminum. Go inside my tank and weld up the aluminum. So the next one thing led to another.
Your business, of 100% of the business that you are doing right now, it sounds like most of it is tank inspections and repair?
Yeah.
Wow.
About 80% of my business is that.
Are you happy with that? Are you looking to expand into other stuff?
I'm bored.
Okay. It's boring. That's honest. That's good.
I've been in the crude business for 15 years. Like
so
same
then,
thing all the time.
So in being in that area, in that business, do you see any opportunities in either what you're doing or in other stuff that you'd like to start doing? Whether it be more of the same, even though it's boring, would you scale that business up, or are you looking to do other stuff?
I would love to scale my business up. I had 4 guys in the shop this winter full time, and I'd love to scale my business up, but it's finding qualified personnel.
And tell me about qualified. Like, I understand how, there was a time recently where anyone with a hammer was a construction worker. How do you need to be qualified for this?
So I'm assuming you're a mechanic by trade?
Nope.
Okay. What's your background?
That's interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that. My background is high tech. I was a kid. I actually assembled computers in the early 90s.
DOS prompt and IRC
DOS and Windows 3.1 and then Windows 95 and then so that's my background. It wasn't until 2010 that I got into heavy equipment. Mm-hmm. And I've been interested in heavy equipment ever since. I've been in several different industries, several different companies, a lot of fun stuff, but I'm definitely most passionate about heavy equipment and construction. It's just so vast. Mining, resources, all that stuff. I do understand how an excavator works and a lot of the parts on it. I'm definitely not a mechanic, but I've worked around mechanics for the last 15 years. And I've seen the problems they've dealt with and understand the problems they deal with. I don't know how long have you been watching the channel for?
I watch it with my kids on and off for about 6 months, right? Like I just kind of browse through it here and there, and you got guys out in They just do bush fixes, right? Like,
Yeah, not just
and they do
bush.
good work.
Yeah, yeah, lots of different stuff. But the whole concept is that we want to inspire the next generation. I was told in a meeting today by a big construction company here that for 7 people who leave the industry, there's one joining the industry. And
Yes.
I don't know the specifics of what parts of the industry, but we're talking about construction in general. And we recognized that was a problem way back in 2010, 2011. We were having problems finding people to fix our equipment. The only options out there were going to the dealer and spending $250 an hour. So we
Yep.
thought that was very difficult in our business to sustain that and maintaining all your equipment properly.
And getting back to this tanker stuff, so everybody that buys a welder is now a welder, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
tanker stuff, welding is a really weird industry. I get a mechanics ticket, that's good for life. I don't
Okay.
have to retest. I don't have to do
Okay.
anything. Welding, you're retested every 2 years. And then just because you're a welder doesn't mean you can weld in a tank.
Yeah.
So it's a B620 code. It's not, so guy that welds pipeline, oh, I'm certified to weld a pipeline. I'm a deep pressure welder. Or a TIG welder that welds in a plant somewhere. Oh, yeah, it's great, but you can't weld in a tank. Oh, so it's a really specialized industry. There's a lot of guys that blow themselves up. Like every single year in Alberta, there's 3 shops that blow up.
Wow, really?
Just 6 months ago, 2 people died in the tank.
So that's just inexperience and being unsafe.
Complacency, like the guys that died in the tank. Oh, it's just a quick job. I can pop this valve out. No big deal. We don't have to steam the tank. We don't need breathing air. No big deal. We'll just go in there and get it done. We'll do the job. Do our boss a solid, right? We'll do
Yeah.
the boss a solid. And the sad part is his wife was delivering coffees to him, and they were both dead inside the tank.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Local outfit 5 years ago, too cheap to phone me to come fix their tank, decided to weld it on themselves, split that tank wide open, blew their doors off the shop, sent 2 guys to the hospital.
Wow.
Like, you're hauling flammable liquid.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know if you've heard about H2S. That's hydrogen disulfide. That's really common up here. Every grade school kid has their H2S course. It's hydrogen, which is extremely flammable, and sulfur, and it's deadly. It used to be the exposure limit was 10 parts per million. And we're dealing, some of the trailers I deal with, like the acid gas stuff, is 75% sour. To grease the trailer, you have to go under air. You have to mask up to grease the trailer.
When you first get a job like that, you probably can't rely on the people who are bringing it in. Is there a way of you being very cautious and sure that you're not in a situation that could explode? Because if they tell you, oh no, we're just hauling water with it, I assume you can't assume, right?
We use a gas monitor, so I'll go outside on top of the tank, vent the tank. If I know it's been in really sour service, I'll mask up. I got masks in the shop. We'll go under air, like the firefighters, right? Put the Scott air pack on, go up top, sniff the tank, see if it's good. That passes, then we'll go inside the tank and sniff it. And then if it's still good, then I'll take the mask off and inspect the tank. And if I think it's okay, then we'll go ahead on it. And 9 times out of 10, it's not okay, and we got to call another steamer in to steam it out.
So the sniffing process is a device?
Yeah, either electronic, or they sell ampules, like glass ampules that detect this H2S or LELs, which is lower explosive limit, which is basically like your gas fumes at the gas station, right? You can smell them coming off.
Yeah.
That would be LELs.
Can the device determine the chemical makeup of what you're dealing with?
To a certain extent. So we'll use a 4-head monitor. It monitors carbon monoxide. It monitors H2S, oxygen levels, and carbon dioxide all in one shot. Or no, sorry, LELs. So it'll monitor all that, but up to a certain limit. Like once it gets beyond your explosive limit, it'll just say too high.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
It'll go off and say, yeah, you're out to lunch. Or if your oxygen's too low or your H2S is too high, it'll just basically like an ohm meter, it'll just go out of limit and say no, then it starts buzzing and flashing and doing all kinds of things.
What's the craziest thing that you've ever encountered?
I've done a repair on a tank under nitrogen because they could not steam the tank good enough because aluminum is porous. So they could steam it, and then 20 minutes later, that tank is what we call hot again. So we grabbed 2 bottles of nitrogen, displaced all the oxygen inside the tank. I masked up, went in the tank, performed the repair, and came back out.
Wow.
With a 0 oxygen environment.
Wow. You just wouldn't send your apprentice in to do something like that?
Hell no.
That's crazy.
I wouldn't send any of my employees to do that. That's a me thing. I've been up to my chest in crude oil.
Wow.
Changing valves inside a tank because they couldn't empty it out. Yeah, like we do, like that's not Not something you put on TV. It would make for an awesome TV program.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. That's actually boring to you. It sounds really interesting. So, what's your biggest challenge then in presumably training people?
Yeah,
How do you keep people engaged?
I've been doing it for 15 years. Even on the construction side, right? Somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, we've had the hose blew up all its hydraulic pumps and there's pieces all over the place, or we snapped the boom off of it or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, so."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, they're panicking," and I'm like, "Well, like what?" Like my brain just kicks into, "Okay, how we're gonna fix
Yeah.
this and what are we gonna take apart?" I've done like the scope of what I've done is really wide. Like I've done everything from logging to mining. I like to stay busy and I like a new challenge. I guess that's why I kind of bounced around quite a bit. Like on the logging side, like I've built like the saw heads, they turn at 3,500 RPM, and to shim them, you need these special shims that you got to get from the dealership.
Yeah.
Well, on a Sunday, on a long weekend, you can't get them. So I wandered around the shop and found the first stage kit that was metal, measured it, and it was 20 thou, and that's what I needed. So I made my own shims.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
What do you offer? What are you guys all about? Like at the end of the day, how do you make your money?
That's a really good question. I always ask myself that. We keep spending money creating content, whether it's videos or whatever it is. The guys are filming all over the place. It's very expensive. We're playing the long game. Like I said, we started the channel because we couldn't find people. And so obviously you're not going to start a channel and start getting people. But 5 to 10 years out, you might, some of the people that watch your stuff, and like, I could do that. We get emails all the time from people saying, I watched your channel. It inspired me. I started doing this. I love my job. This is great. Thank you very much. It's really cool.
So you're a content creator.
Yeah, but we're way more than that. Content is a way for us to reach people like you, but content is a way for us to reach people who need your services as well, right? And so our business model, Tekamo's business model right now is one thing is matching people who own equipment or companies who own equipment with qualified mechanics in their area. Usually it's independent. There's people there again, maybe they don't want to use the dealer for one reason or another. Maybe it's too far away. Maybe they have a project in the middle of nowhere or somewhere where there is no dealer around. And that's one thing. We also sell parts. We have a track company as well, rubber tracks.
Okay.
We do undercarriage as well, components. Yep.
That rubber track thing would be huge up here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Huge.
If in your region, there might only be 1 or 2 sources people go for rubber tracks. They don't care the cost. I mean, it's like buying OEM tracks at the dealer. It's like people that need...
people buy, people that, so I'm in the middle, also grain. So grain farming is a huge industry up here in the East Country.
Yeah.
Tractors.
Yeah.
Everybody is running because of soil compaction, blah, 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 blah. They get their tracks either out of Saskatchewan or out of Vancouver.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do aftermarket, high quality tracks for Challengers and whatever other machines that you need. What type of ag stuff? Presumably you work on ag stuff, construction, everything. Obviously you're mainly with tanks, but you probably get called out to do anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what kind of tracked ag machines are in that region?
John Deere and Case. So your big 9,000 series John Deeres.
Yeah.
Like your 500 to 600 horse.
Wow.
And
yeah.
same thing on the Case side. Yeah. There's farmers here with the one local farmer. He's 10 clicks away. He farms 45 quarters, and a quarter section is 160 acres.
Wow.
And he's considered like a medium farm here. There's guys farming for 40, 50,000 acres.
How much equipment do they have? Like how many tractors do you think are in that region? Obviously one tractor is probably used for a lot of the area, right?
A farm of that size would have 3 to 4 tractors.
Okay.
And then plus you'd have your grain carts, which are now tracked. You'd have sprayers now are tracked. Yeah, there's a fair bit. And usually farms of that size will have 2 sprayers.
Is it pretty abrasive there? The terrain? No.
Pretty soft.
Okay.
Mostly soft. Rocks, yes, but not like a gravel pit. It's a very clayey soil.
Yeah.
No real sand. It's just lots of clay.
Let's say that you find someone or you hire someone that you're confident who can take on 80% of the current work you do. Obviously, the dangerous stuff, you come in and you do it, right? Or you train them or whatever, right? And then you go on to expand your business. What type of stuff would you go after in your area? Specifically, type of work? Obviously, you've been up there a while. You know the region pretty well. What does that region lack? You're not abandoning what you do. You're just expanding, right?
If I could find like 2 more aluminum welders, I would stick with the inspection side and just keep bringing work in.
Okay.
Because as you inspect, right, it'd be like no different than a Ritchie Brothers or even Finning, right, comes out as a track inspection, right? And they don't charge anything for the track inspection.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Because they want to sell you an undercarriage.
Yeah.
If they want to do. Yes, I'll come do your tank inspection, but the ultimate goal is if you do have a problem, like I don't go looking for them, but if you do have a problem, then I provide a facility for that repair to be completed, right?
It sounds like that's something that you would want to build upon. That sounds like a pretty unique service. How many other people in your region do that?
3.
Do you consider them competitors, or do you pass work to them sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
In this region, I take care of the 236 TDG units, so they need inspections every year. And then I've got 3 other outfits with 100 plus units. So it's busy.
So if you did have, let's just say, someone listening to the podcast or watching the channel, maybe we go film with you one day and you're on the channel, you're showing what you do. That's a lot of what we want to do, is expose the industry and make people interested in things they didn't know existed. There's someone with a certain skill set right now who may be listening or maybe watching. And
the thing is, if you buy a tanker truck, you already know who to call, where to go. You would be stupid to buy a tank truck and not have insider knowledge of the business, right?
Yeah, but if someone is a mechanic, I'm saying the skill set, like what I'm saying is that there's a potential of someone listening that's like, hey, I want to go work with that guy. I want to learn that business. I want to learn that. So what skills as a mechanic or a welder would you need to already have in order for you to take someone on, bring them into your shop and apprentice with you, and someone that you could essentially train to either take over the business or expand your business? What skill set would they need? So if you're putting out a job application, like maybe 100,000 people will listen to this. Who knows?
The skills required to have some experience, like welding aluminum, for example, and oddball metals, like aluminum and stainless, be competent at it. You don't necessarily have to be certified, because everything we do is a CWB certification. So somebody would have to pass, like Bob shows up here and wants to weld, that's great, but you got to pass your weld test first, right?
Okay.
Before you start welding on barrels. I've got my son that's an apprentice here right now. He's welding with me. He does lots of the welding, but he doesn't weld on barrels.
Okay.
He hasn't passed his CWB yet. He's under very close supervision. So he's getting practice at it, but he's not quite there yet. And he's actually going for his first year welding in October.
Cool. And so as far as being on your own business, what are the main benefits that you have now of being on your own, running your own company, as opposed to being an employee?
I can make my schedule to a certain extent. The financial aspect, there's a little bit of a financial benefit. I can give direction to the business. Like I can pick and choose what I want to do. Like I did lots of work on trailers. I don't work on trailers anymore. I don't do brake jobs on B trains anymore. I choose not to. If I had to, yeah, I could, but I choose not to. And then talking to you, I'm kind of at a crossroad. I'm going on a motorcycle trip here next week down to Creston, and I'm going to do some thinking about where my business is going to head in the next year, as to whether we're going to keep maintaining the status quo, or we're going to build bigger, or am I just going to scale it back to myself and maybe a helper or two, and that's it.
Okay, so you have 2 scenarios then. You grow it and you scale it, or you just dial it back and make it like a 1 or 2 man show. What are the biggest challenges you face if you go the way of growing and scaling? We already know that you need to find the right people or hire the right people. What else would you say is something, if you found some people that you're confident with, what are the other challenges or things that you need to consider in growing that?
Things that are challenging for me is on the financial end. I'm a mechanic and a welder, hands-on type guy. I'm not much for numbers. That is a very big challenge for me. That's actually the biggest challenge in my business, is keeping the numbers and the billing straight. That is, I was doing billing before you phoned me. That is a tough part of my business. And then the personnel.
Okay.
And then finding the backing to get any bigger than I am right now. The investment would have to be huge. And then
what would you need?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know.
Well, what kind of things would you need to buy?
Well, I would have to build a bigger shop. Like right now I have a 50 by 88 shop with a 20-foot ceiling. My door is 24 wide by 18 high. So I can fit whatever the hell I want in here. I don't have an overhead crane. That's a big thing. I'm out in the country. Power supply is a huge issue. We're running off of generators right now.
Wow.
When we're welding. Yeah. Well, we're kind of out in the sticks. 3-phase power, like because that's a general pretty standard thing in the city for welding shops. For me to get three-phase power in here, it's $10,000 a month, whether I use it or not.
Wow. Need a lot of business
Hmm.
to pay for that.
To expand my shop any bigger. So I run a farm as well. So on the financial end of it, the business rents the shop off the farm. So therefore the taxes stay low, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. Pretty common up here. To build something bigger, then I'd have to subdivide my land or find a piece of property to build on.
So if you scale up, this term called bootstrapping, your goal and your plan is to scale up and to grow the business, but you don't want to make any large investments up front. You want to make do with what you have until you absolutely need to grow. And so you have a list of priorities. What capacity are you currently running at right now? And so with what you have, how much more business could you take on in your current facility?
Last winter, our best month last winter, we rolled over 130,000 gross in a month with 4 guys in the shop.
With 4 guys. And that's mainly service work, right?
Yeah, that's unqualified personnel. That's just 4 helpers basically, and I run around like the doctor in the hospital, and oh, it's your time to shine, Ben. So I go weld that, and then they prep the other area, so I go weld that, and I just go from project to project.
And so,
welding.
Do you think you could sustain that same amount?
No.
No? Why not?
Yeah, I could, but I had a bad summer. Personnel issues were guys not showing up for work. I can't find more guys. I pay them fairly well, I would like to think, but just personal issues of various kinds. And I get it. Like, they don't have no vested interest in my business, right? They're vested in a paycheck. They're not invested in making the business run.
Is that a purely economical thing? Because I know that money is a major factor, especially living in Canada. Things are bloody expensive. Probably, I don't know how much more expensive they are there, but that's just one element of it. And granted, it's a very important element. How do you think you could keep people engaged? Because if you keep them engaged and you keep them learning, obviously, if you pay them well, let's assume that they're happy with what they're making. What other ideas do you have to keep them engaged?
I don't. And I'm not, like, when I started in this, you just go to work. I work 12, 14 hours a day, and you just go to work and you learn stuff, and it's interesting and it's great. And that, you're right, that seems to be lost on my employees, right? They don't have that same curiosity, I guess, or drive to excel at what they're doing, right? Yeah, that engagement piece is a huge factor. I'm in a position now, so I can't find anybody local to do what I need them to do. I'm looking at setting up a well site or accommodations pretty much.
Yeah.
And bringing guys in from Edmonton, Vancouver.
Very
4
smart.
days or 5 days.
Yeah.
And then putting them up. And then once they're done their hitch, whether it's whatever we decide on, they go home. So,
how close are you to any kind of city?
Grand Prairie is about 2 hours away. That's 50,000 people.
Okay.
Edmonton is, guys say they do it in 5. It's about 6 hours away. And Vancouver is like 18 or 20 hours from where I'm at.
So you're kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, if you look at Edmonton and you go up north, I'm closer to the territories than I am Edmonton.
Okay. I think finding people, like, it's tough, but I'm pretty sure that there are people out there, whether in Canada or wherever, just assume they're in Canada, that would love the opportunity of learning and living there. Like, there's probably a lot that you could offer, especially if you had accommodations too, right?
Well, and we're looking at, like, my wife and I, we bought a house. So my son, a second house, and we got a little hamlet of a community of 100 people. Like, it's not huge.
Yeah.
We bought a house, basically as crew housing, right? So my son stays there, and then one of our other employees stays there. It's not much, but it's all right. Would I put a tradesman in there? No.
Do you think maybe that's one part of it, is that it's not so much the job that the people are doing?
It's a combination. Like, these tanks are physically demanding. Like, it's an extremely physically demanding job. And the reason is there's no flat surface to stand on. There is absolutely no flat surface to stand on in there. And that's a very unnatural way of being in there. Like, my son was in a tank today for 6 hours, and I told him to get out and go home.
Okay.
You're done. Like, you got it. It's physically very demanding, and then not like strenuous, but it's like doing yoga all day.
Yeah.
So you're played out.
Yeah.
And then the environment that you're working in isn't exactly healthy for you either, right? Like, we do the best we can, but you still have a dust mask on underneath your welding hood all day, and you're breathing through that. It's not natural, right?
Have you seen anything that your competitors do, any part of the process that could help improve that? Are there any things that you could, like, say, standing on you're always on an angle, like build a plank, who knows? I don't know.
That's fine, but the hatch that you go through is 26 inches across.
Yeah.
That's all you got.
Yeah.
It's just grin and bear it. We do some planking, like we'll try to stick some boards down in there, pieces of wood or something, right? And then you got to watch because you can't use anything steel, or you can't use steel in an aluminum tank because
Yeah.
if you scratch it,
Yeah.
scratch liner or whatever, that's a major faux pas. And yeah, it's just challenging, very challenging.
Let's talk backup plan then. Let's say that we could go down that path of like how I'm pretty sure we could probably figure out some ideas of ways of attracting people and making it engaging for them. What other things could you add to what you're already doing? So maybe let's just say that, you know, you learn tanks, you get good at that, and then you learn this other stuff and it's like outside of the tank.
My struggle is transferring my knowledge that I have to somebody else. And it's been a struggle since day one because I do so much varied stuff. Like I've had various helpers in the service truck out on field calls, and they want to be apprentices, which is great. But we, like, one day we're doing an engine, the next day we're gutting out a locomotive, and the next day we're dealing with a railroad spiker, and then the next day we're dealing with a tanker, and the helpers' minds are just blown. Like anybody that I hire here, it takes them, the guys that are quick, probably about 3 weeks. Guys that aren't so quick, probably 3 months to get into kind of the routine of how things work here. It's a pretty steep learning curve to have somebody that's never been in this industry. And guys that are in this industry are already well established and making really good money.
So what are they doing then? What are those guys doing that are making really good money? Have they found a way of scaling it? Do they pay their employees more? Do they charge more?
They don't scale it.
Okay.
They don't scale
They're
it.
doing it themselves.
They just do it themselves. Them and one other guy. And guys that scale it up big time started out as sales outlets. So they're selling, for example, trim car trailers, that's a brand name. They're selling them. So part of their sales is that they have to provide service for them, right? And the profit margins on selling tanks are fairly large. They have that financial backing to grow their shop or grow their business, right? Because they're not just doing strictly tank repairs, they're doing everything.
What type of relationship do you have with your top customers? For example, if you moved, pardon?
Really good.
That's really good. And of the top customers, how many customers represent 80% of your business?
About 4.
4. Okay. Would you say that you have a good relationship with all of them?
Yes.
If you moved your facility, would they continue working with you?
Depending how far I moved.
Okay.
So my 2 main customers are in Peace River. Between those 2 customers, there's almost 300 tanks. If I was to move my facility, it would have to be closer to them, not further.
Where do they deliver to?
They like their product.
Yeah, because they're tankers, they go from one place to another, right? Is it always the same place?
Sometimes not. So those outfits, the one outfit in particular, the very large one, has trucks everywhere from Nova Scotia to Kitimat.
Okay. Wow.
So they do facility cleanings, like so your big process plants, pulp mills, chemical treatment plants, things like that. They'll go in there and wash and clean during their shutdowns, right?
Okay.
They have, the stuff they have is absolutely mind-blowing. Your average little pressure washer at home that you wash your vehicle with, they took a frac pump and turned it into a pressure washer.
Wow.
So they have a 3,000 horse engine driving their pressure washer.
Wow. That's to clean the tanks.
That's to clean the tanks. And so by doing that, they were having the same problem, finding personnel. So we run a wash truck with a pressure washer on it, one wand, one guy or 2 guys per truck, right? Highly trained to run this unit. Now with this frac unit, they have 1 guy that knows how to run the unit, and they're running 15 guys off that one pump. So the guy on the end of the pressure washer doesn't need to know a whole bunch, just wash.
Yeah.
Hire anybody off the street to do that. Now they only have to train 1 guy on how to run that system.
Where do they bring the waste?
To disposal.
Which is near them, right?
Not necessarily.
No?
Disposal can be 6 hours away. It could be next door. It could be 6 hours away.
So there's various different disposal places?
Yes, and depending what you're disposing of.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
This oil field industry is not, it's really, really different. A disposal well is not a disposal well. Or like Secure, Tervita, CETA, places like that. Like so Swan Hills is a commonly referred to one because they take care of all the really super nasty stuff. Depending on what you have on board, that depends where it goes.
So you couldn't move your business?
I could move into Peace River, I guess.
Yeah, because it's closer.
They're fine. Yeah, find a shop in Peace River, and then I'd have to make a commute.
What
But
other services could you offer those four clients now who represent 80% of your business? What other services could you add that would increase your margins with them?
they have their own mechanics. The one big event has their own body shop.
Okay,
Like they're big
wow.
enough.
Wow.
They have 3 overhead cranes inside the shop.
So then tell me
Uh,
why they don't do your services in-house.
liability.
Wow. Insurance.
Like I said before, like 3 shops a year blow up in Alberta. They do not want
Their
that on
insurance
there.
would be so sky high that they'd have to increase their prices, which would.
It's not just the insurance; it's a conflict of interest. It's the perceived conflict of interest of them inspecting and repairing their own
I
tanks.
only mean the
So
repair aspect. I mean, if you separate the inspection, so you still can inspect them, but they do the repairs, would that be viable for you?
no, because they have to get personnel certified to do the repairs, and that's about a 2-year process.
Okay. Wow.
It's a whole other like it's
Yeah.
really
How has that affected your insurance then? Presumably you're insured to be able to work with those type of companies. You do a pretty unique service. How is your insurance work? Is your insurance expensive? Presumably it's difficult to get.
it's difficult to get. My insurance runs me probably around that 45,000 a year
Wow.
in insurance,
Wow.
and not just due to the tank stuff, due to also like working on service rigs or drilling rigs or really expensive pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
Like a service rig is $3 to $4 million. So if I have that up on jack stands and all of a sudden, God forbid, it rolls over, who covers that?
Yeah.
So your regular $3 million liability is null and void here. It's 10 million.
Yeah. 10's probably a minimum, right, to work with those clients, work on that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
They request 5, but I carry 10 because
Yeah.
5 won't cover it. It's a really cool industry to get into. Like it is for somebody new getting in here. You do a lot of neat, cool stuff. When I started out on it, I did it. It was pretty cowboy. Like we just blasted in air with air compressors into the tanks and did whatever we had to do, right? Which
Yeah.
is not right, but not just not knowing, right?
So tell me about work-life balance and how managing your own schedule and running your own company, how has that affected your personal life, your family life?
I have a fantastic wife. We've been married. Well, actually, we're not married. We got together 20 years ago, and she's a saint. I've put in 400-hour months in service trucks and drove right past my house and couldn't stop
Wow.
because something had to be fixed.
Wow.
I've gone for 3 months without seeing my wife and kids.
Wow. That must take a toll.
There is no work-life balance here. At 42, I'm finally starting to get it. I'm finally seeing the rewards or the dividends out of my business and being able to afford to take the time. I'm a big motorcycle guy. I love motorcycles. I haven't had a motorcycle in 20 years. My wife actually bought me a Harley this spring and said, "You need a hobby. You're going to buy yourself a Harley because you haven't done anything in 20 years." We've had 2 holidays in 20 years.
Wow.
I take Sunday off if I'm around home. If I'm up in a camp job, there is no Sunday off. I worked at Site C. I don't know if you've heard of that project.
Oh, yeah. Massive.
Yeah, I worked at Site C last winter. I slept in my service truck for 3 months.
Wow.
My truck was too large. They wouldn't allow me in the camp parking lot. So I had to go to town every second or third day, get groceries. And then every 6 days, I'd come home and have a shower.
Wow.
Yeah.
The word success, what does success mean to you?
Being able to do what I want. And I would consider myself at about 50% success right now.
Okay.
Because I can, on a whim, I wouldn't say on a whim, but with a little bit of planning. So this trip, for example, motorcycle trip down to Creston, I'm planning that on a 2-week notice. I have the money to go do it. I can go on a motorcycle trip to Creston where I'll probably spend a week doing that, and that doesn't affect me in the least.
So do you think it's possible to be successful working less hours?
No.
Why?
Just the commitment. You have to be committed or somebody else takes your place, right? Like all this stuff, whether it's farming or oil field, is very time sensitive. If you're not there to assist your customer gets soured very quickly.
Do you have anyone locally that you trust that does the same stuff that you could pass on the business to if you were unable to?
No.
No?
No.
Because of trust or because of quality of work?
Both.
Okay. Because you're afraid, of course, that they'd take your client over.
I've had that happen. I had a guy working here, a great mechanic, and we parted ways, and 3 months later, he stole 50% of my clients.
Wow.
My rate's 145, and he was charging 85.
Yeah. That's not sustainable.
I don't blame the customer.
Yeah.
If you're going to get cheaper work done, you know what? You bide your time a little bit. I've seen it happen before. You bide your time a little bit, and 6 months later, all them customers are back because his quality of work
Yeah.
wasn't there. And I'm really careful about that. And the reason why this focus change or this little trip I'm taking is because the quality of work in the shop is going down. So again, I'm going to take a look at what I can do to increase that, because your standards have to be high. Like you have to be perfect.
So tell me, how often do you get a new client for that type of work?
About every 3 months.
Oh, wow.
I do an inspection for somebody new, or I have a tanker roll up for somebody new that I don't know who they are.
How do they find out about you?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
I don't do any advertising whatsoever. Yeah, if you've got a broke down tanker within 300 miles of me, it's pretty simple. You take it here.
When you say a broke down tanker,
if you've got a hole in the side of your tanker and you're leaking crude oil onto the ground, and
not good.
And the environment's after you.
Wow.
So my customers are also not just customers; we're business partners, because I have a tanker in my yard. I need it steamed out, so I phone them. They come and clean it and steam it, or take care of the spill. I organize that sometimes, and then the tanker shows up in the yard, so they get a piece of the pie too. So it's kind of one hand washes the other a little bit.
And can you profit off of that as well? Recharging out that service? No? Okay.
I could, but I don't.
Why don't you?
The oil patch is a very fickle business, and if you want to wait 180 days to get paid, you can go right ahead. I don't wait 180 days to get paid.
I understand. So you could make a profit, but instead you choose to get paid quickly for a better price.
Yes.
Okay.
I make good money fixing tanks. I could make more if I facilitated, I guess. I could make 10% or 15% on it. But then my focus is not on fixing tanks. It's on organizing stuff. And if, like I said again, with the personnel, if I had somebody here that could take over what I do, that, yeah, absolutely, I could focus more on that. And I do other businesses. I do run a custom haying business. I run a farm. I run rental properties. So I do have other things on my plate.
Wow, you got lots going on. How much of your time is divided between farming, and what type of stuff do you farm?
So I run a custom haying business. I probably spend 200 hours summer doing that.
Cool.
Yeah, it breaks it up. It's a nice break from get me out of the shop, and I try to get it out of my, but like this summer, like most of my hired hands did all the haying because I didn't have time.
What you're doing is pretty unique. What advice do you have for people? So people who are listening, probably from all over the world, but 54% of people who at least watch our channel are from North America. What advice do you have for someone who might go into your space in a different region, who are looking for ways to expand? Obviously, insurance is a challenging thing, and you'd have to figure that one out. But from a skill perspective, you've got someone who clearly is skilled. They've been running their business for a while, and they want to maybe add this as a new service. Do you have any advice for someone like that besides don't do it?
Really focus on the numbers. Like, unfortunately, that's something that's not taught in trade school, and I'm guilty of it myself, of not focusing on the numbers. I get so focused on trying to do a good job and get the customer up and running again, or whatever the case may be, and then it comes time to billing, and now, you've got 100 hours, let's say, into a project, and we'll cut them a deal. Well, you're not really cutting them a deal. You're doing yourself a disfavor. Right?
Yeah.
Charge fair for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't always heed my own advice, but yeah.
Do you ever get clients who, whether they're new ones, probably not existing ones, do you get clients who really don't have an idea of what is involved in what you do and look at a bill and say, what the hell, even though you are probably very kind?
Yes. Oh, yes.
And is that because they have no concept of what's involved?
That's right. That's right.
So knowing your numbers, most people don't like surprises. So with your experience, are you better at looking at something and being like, this is a big job, or this is going to be X, and it turns out to be pretty close? Are you getting better at guessing? Because I think if people aren't surprised, if you set their expectations from the beginning, I think that's much more acceptable when they see a big bill, because they already knew that it's going to cost around that.
Yeah, I'm usually within $2,000 or $3,000 on a $50,000 job.
On a $50,000, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and then, so example, in a $50,000 job, I had one last winter. Only $6,000 of that was materials.
Okay, it's all time.
What I do with a job like that is I'll take pictures and I'll send a text or an email every second or third day to show the customer,
What you're doing.
what we're doing,
Yeah.
where we're at, where this labor is going. And then they go, oh, okay, well, now we understand, right? At least they have something tangible to look at. Because if you just hand them a bill for $50,000, yeah, your tank was fixed. Well, it appears to be the same as when it's entered your shop.
Yeah.
So what has changed?
Yeah.
Where's the 50,000? Like, you didn't gold plate it, you didn't chrome it up.
Yeah.
So where'd that 50 grand go?
It's all inside.
It's all inside. And that's kind of the unfortunate part about mechanicking or doing repair services and stuff. Like the old monster garage thing, right? Vehicle must appear to be stock when you're done, right?
Yeah.
So the vehicle rolls in the shop and it rolls out, and here's your $50,000 bill, and it doesn't look really any different than when it rolled in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In the rental business, when someone damages your machine and you have to charge them for it, and even if they know they damaged it, there's absolutely no value to anyone in charging someone $5,000 for fixing something that no one will really benefit from.
Right.
That's tough. I find from the mechanics I talk to, it's so strange. The mechanics that we associate with here are very good mechanics. They're very reasonable. They're very knowledgeable. They do great work, and they always save money from what you'd pay at the dealer. It's in some cases significant, some cases maybe even half of what they'd pay at the dealer. But for some reason, they seem to get the impression that their work isn't appreciated. And these guys work their asses off. There's something about mechanics. There's something special about them that they like fixing stuff. They like being that, I don't know, not the hero, but I mean, they love what they do. Most people I know love what they do, at least like it. But the customer, for some reason, doesn't value what they do because they might not pay them for a while. They might complain about a bill, even though they looked at the time spent and said, I'm not billing for all my time. I can't bill this much. Do you ever find it's just not appreciated? It's hard work.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. People don't understand the implications, and like I can view it from both sides of the fence. Because not only do I mechanic, but I own a business with iron in it as well, right? So somebody goes out and fixes my baler or my tractor or my excavator. My excavator's down. Joe Blow goes and fixes my excavator, comes back and says, yeah, your excavator's fixed. Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. Being a mechanic, I go, oh, yeah, that's a really good job. And I see you paid attention. You cut the zip ties and you put it all, everything's neat and tidy. And you cleaned the cab and be like, yeah, great, good. Your average person would go, of course my equipment's running. That's why I hired you.
Yeah. See, that's something that with our videos, we're trying to get that across to people because a lot of people call us to get work done on their equipment. And when they see what's involved, obviously a lot of people will never watch the channel or watch videos, but I think our videos are pretty authentic in the sense they show the amount of effort that goes in, the amount of work, the long 16, 18-hour days that go into it. I think when people see that, that's one thing that we wanted to do as well. Show people what's involved. Show the clients what's involved. Show potential mechanics what's involved. It's hard work. A lot of people who start taking their heavy equipment course in trade school or whatever, a lot of them drop out. It's not for them.
They don't finish. And it's hard work and it's skilled as well.
Yeah.
And that's the part that the average person doesn't understand is, yes, you're a mechanic. Oh, yeah, look, he's swinging a sledgehammer, taking the tracks apart. But, oh, that's great. But then he's using a dial indicator and a micrometer and plastic gauge and like really fine measuring tools inside an engine or a bore on a cylinder, right? And that's where we're talking like thousandths of an inch. And then you have to be precise and accurate. And let's say you're doing a bore, right? You're line boring or something. So, okay, I've got to take 10 thou out, but my cutter I have to set at 5 because if I set it at 10, then I'm taking twice the cut I should really do and blah, 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 right? Like there's a lot of neat stuff. Or interference fits on bushings. Like, oh, so I'm going to cut this 7 thou, but then I got to bear in mind that I want to shrink that bushing about 3 thou. I want a 3 thou interference fit. There's a little bit of math involved there to make everything jive, right?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so there's more to it than just pulling wrenches.
And I've done that too. And not by choice. Like I've been, I would say even privileged in my experience or my career. Like up north in the territories, there is no part store. You figure it out. Like there's a lathe and a milling machine there. You make your own part.
Wow.
You just make it. Like you're out in the ice road somewhere. I did that for a season. Like, oh, you blew a gasket. Well, okay, well, you need a new gasket for this. And well, the store is 3 days away or a helicopter ride. So you go into the camp shack, grab a cornflakes box, and you hammer out a gasket.
When people go out on their own, what do you think the biggest misconception they have about starting their own business?
Well, that it's going to be a big gravy train. That, oh, I own my own business, so now I can buy the boat and the quad and the whatever else, and I'm going to have all this free time to do whatever. And that is not the case. Every single business owner that I know, the successful one, really watches, number one, where they spend their time and their money.
Yeah.
Because you get checks coming in, like you'll, whatever business you're in, you get a check for $100,000, and everybody, you can look at that and go, oh, Ben got a check for $100,000. He's rich. Well, not really. I've got $90,000 in expenses.
Or $150,000 line of credit that I just have been putting everything on to carry things, right? I understand.
Yeah. And I don't run my business on a line of credit. I run my business I have a few credit cards that are very modest.
Yeah.
I do not run anything on credit.
When you say, people go out on their own, they buy all this fancy stuff, have you seen people do that and it quickly catch up to them? Like, oh, all those things I bought, I actually have to pay for. Now my payments are more than I'm actually making, and they fail. Have you seen that?
I not necessarily fail, but I've seen guys become very, very soured. Service trucks, for example. Oh, I'm going to go buy this service truck. I'm going to go down to Brutus or Summit or whoever the outfit may be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go spend $300,000 in a service truck. Well, that's fine and dandy. Now you've got an $8,000 a month payment that you have to make. You have to make that payment, or they come pick up your truck.
Yeah.
So all that you wanted some time off, you're not having it.
Wow.
You're going to work. Or, oh, you bought this truck. Things are going good for a couple of years. Now the engine blows out of it. Hope you got $50,000 put away.
Yeah.
And the ebb and flow of business too, right? You have the ups and downs, the oil patch, the farming, anything is the same, right? Like we've had some pretty big LNG projects, Site C Dam. They were all happening at the same time. The economy's kind of up a little bit. Everybody's running. Everything's good. And now it comes to an end. Now what?
What do you see? Do you see that happening now? I mean, maybe it didn't just happen, but do you see a slowdown? Do you see light at the end of the tunnel? What's your opinion of?
We're in a severe slowdown right now.
Okay.
Severe.
Okay.
Where I'm at, it is severe. There used to be 300 trucks out there. And for whatever reason, there is not 300 trucks anymore. There might be 50, 75.
So what are your theories?
Well, they've obviously pipelined lots of their stuff, cutbacks in production, because we had a downturn in the economy a few years ago, and then different processes. And so just kind of a snowball effect that they don't need that equipment anymore.
Yeah. So that could be a changing industry, adapting industry. A pipeline puts a lot of people out of work, right?
It does.
But it also could be the economy as well.
The fluid business is very fluid. The oil and gas industry from day one has been always very political. There's outside influences on it that the oil and gas industry itself doesn't have any control over. And then there's a lot of insider stuff that has influence over your little local area that really affects how your business runs.
Yeah.
Permitting, land issues, neat business. And then farming's no different.
Yeah, wow. There's certain things you can do to overcome external factors, right? But at some point, if stuff is slow, it's slow.
I know various construction companies around here. 10% of their fleet moved last winter.
Can you say that again? 10% of their fleet what?
Moved.
Oh, wow.
Or they've had to adapt and go elsewhere. So they're not doing local work anymore. They've gone 6, 7, 8 hours away to go do various projects.
Just to stay busy, right?
To stay afloat.
Wow.
Or they've downsized.
Yeah.
They haven't gone out of business, but they've seriously cut the size of their fleets.
Have you seen any big acquisitions sometimes when things are slow? Because I think there's cycles, right? I think a lot of it is cyclical. Do you see acquisitions happening, cash-rich companies coming in and buying out things when they're slow, maybe on the cheap?
That happened about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Actually, 3 years. There's some outfit that didn't want to weather the storm or couldn't do it or whatever, and then other outfits capitalized on that.
Yeah.
They were getting iron for cheaper, then they roll around 3 years later, and then their assets are appraised at a higher value.
Yeah.
So they've grown as a company without growing as a company.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a weird.
Wow, yeah.
That's on the financial end, right? Where their assets have gained value.
What are some difficulties, misfortunes that you've experienced in your years of being on your own?
Making mistakes. I'm not perfect. I do like buckering up somebody's engine like that. That's a terrible one that you never want to do, but it's happened, unfortunately, a couple times.
Yeah.
Personal injuries. I've lost a couple teeth to this business. I've fallen off things and had to take a couple months out of work. And that's another thing about owning your own business. There's nobody bucking up to give you a wage if you end up in a position where you can't work.
Those are the joys of being in business. I'm sure there is an insurance that you could get, but
Oh, I have one now.
yeah. Yeah. Do you have stories of people that you know of, either in business or in farming or whatever, that didn't buy insurance and suffered a loss and it destroyed them?
Not personally.
The reason I ask is I had a call the other day of someone that they didn't have theft on their roller and they use it every day and they wanted to do a rent to own. And I felt so horrible for them that that's their livelihood. Some $50,000 piece of machinery gets stolen. They have no way of buying another one, but they didn't have insurance on it. It's just such a sad thing.
I've seen some tragedy. We had a buddy of mine that does used to do similar stuff to what I do, right? Small farm mechanic. And he was hauling grain one evening and he fell into the grain trailer and couldn't get out and he died.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
36 years old, 2-year-old son, 45 head of cattle, just getting his feet under him, and that came to an end.
Wow.
You know, done it a million times. Like he's unloaded millions of grain,
Yeah.
millions of bushels of grain.
Yeah.
Like it's not the first time. Pretty good friend of mine, and unfortunately he didn't make it. Putting in hours and maybe a little complacent or whatever happened there. We'll never know exactly what happened. But yeah, there's some huge risks.
Wow.
Guys working on cats. I've never personally been anywhere where that's happened. There's a story. My old shop foreman apprentice was working on a light plant. Stupid little light plant. You never think nothing of it. And stuck a screwdriver in there while it was running in the wrong spot. He got hit with 600 volts.
Oh, wow.
There is some tragic stories to the industry, but yeah, be careful. Fortunately, like I've had some close calls myself. Like I've been working underneath the hoist. Transmission was up on the transmission jack, an 18-speed Eaton. It's about 800 and some pounds. And for whatever reason, the threads were buggered up on the end of the jack, and I didn't notice it, and the transmission came off the jack.
Wow.
So you're stuck underneath the hoist with nowhere to go, and I just happened to be back skinny enough that I could kind of weasel my way like quickly to the side, and it rushed down the side of my leg and landed on the floor. That could have been a really, really bad situation, right? So what you take from that is really inspect your stuff before you're going underneath something, right?
Tell me about tools. How often do you buy tools?
Oh, probably every couple of weeks I buy something.
What's your favorite tool?
I got a snap-on crescent wrench that has little grooves in it that's meant to grip things a little bit better. That even my guys call it. Go get him his favorite crescent wrench. So a 10-inch crescent wrench that I really, really like.
Cool.
It works on tanker valves, for example. That's really great. But I've got some bigger stuff like some pullers and things that are kind of neat. My welding stuff is pretty cool. I take great pride in my welding stuff.
That's cool. And so have you ever customized a tool before?
Oh, yeah, a lot. 6-liter Fords, little IPR sensor in behind the turbo that if you cut a socket in half and weld something to it, you can kind of make it fit in there without taking the cab off, and it works great.
Oh, wow. And have you seen anyone else do it? Did you get the idea from somewhere, or did you just come up with it yourself?
I seen somebody else do that one in particular. But yeah, I've made all kinds of different adapters and brackets, and like especially like I got a 65-ton hauler ram for pushing and pulling on things. You're making various adapters to fit the pin or whatever you're pushing or pulling on, right?
Yeah. We're doing a new series on the channel that will show kind of mechanics and what customized tools they've made and how they've made them and what they're for. Cool. I saw a first release yesterday. The guys showed it to me. I was pretty impressed, but really cool how they did it. That's one thing we want to start doing, is featuring tools like stuff that you've made, custom tools on the channel. We want to give people ideas. That's the whole idea that what we're trying to do here, is help people learn stuff and help them grow.
Yeah.
And also maybe there's a really good idea that we could, develop and sell. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I haven't made anything like that's going to make me a millionaire.
Yeah.
It is adapt and overcome, right? Like that. Yeah. That's, if you don't have it, make it. Like hub sockets, for example, on trucks, like it's a 4.5-inch socket, and I needed one that was a little smaller, so I cut the edges off of it and bashed it in, welded up. It's simple.
Like excavators haven't really changed much in many years. Is there any technological advancements that you've noticed in your career that you're like, wow, that's cool, or that helped?
The GPS is kind of a double-edged sword. That's been really neat on the excavator side. I think the electronics are starting to be really, really cool, but on the flip side is they can be finicky, right?
Like grade control type GPS you're talking about?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the aggregate side on the, because I deal lots with rock crushers too, or a fair amount. The drone technology has come phenomenally. Like that's made life just wow. Because we used to have to run around like to measure piles or something, right? Your production or whatever. You have to run around with the
Yeah.
hire the surveyor to come in, and he'd have to go up there with a little GPS thing and monitor the pile. Now they just fly over it.
Yeah, it's
Takes them
incredible.
45 minutes.
Pretty
5 to
accurate.
45 minutes. They fly over the whole pit before you start. They fly over it when you think you're done, and then they say, yeah, here's where you're at. Done. And
That's
then 45
really cool.
minutes. What a time savings. The graders have gone from that piano key or yoke style to joystick. That was a big leap on the grader end of things.
Yeah.
So they don't have the old school every individual lever on both sides of the steering wheel anymore. Like Cat, for example, doesn't even have a steering wheel in them. That's been some really neat stuff, which comes with its own challenges, right? Like they had some bugs to work out in them. And
yeah,
technology is a good thing, but it's also been somewhat of a detriment, I think. On the engine side, it's really, really shortened the life of the engines. These emission systems, has really shortened the life on the engine.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, we see that a lot. That's a pretty common thing. 30 to 40% of call-outs for new equipment are emissions related, sensors, stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't, like if I go on the machinery side out to the bush, I cannot leave my shop without a computer.
Yeah.
Like I immediately ask the customer, what brand do you have?
Yeah.
To make sure I got the COM adapter to be able to plug into it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's just the world we're in.
So you're equipped with all that stuff. You've got all those tools?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, right on. Yeah.
Guys got to be careful with that though. Like some new technicians become very reliant on the computer and don't want to do physical checks on stuff. I had one a few years ago that a technician from an unnamed company went there to check out an excavator, low power problem, and complaint of cooling. It wouldn't cool itself. They spent 3 days doing samples and computer stuff and whatever heck they were doing. And I showed up there, and within half an hour, I'm like, "Yeah, your turbo's shot and your oil cooler's done.
Wow.
Have a nice day." Like,
and that's where the old school diagnosis comes in that experience. These new guys are they're just too reliant, like you said, on the computer, right?
Right. Computers are good. Yeah, you use the computer to confirm your diagnosis. Yeah. So what I did is when the turbo obviously shot and the oil cooler's done, or let's say you have an injector fault, right? So the injector fault, it's smoking, so you have a smoking issue. Well, use the computer to confirm your diagnosis, right? So you go in there and you do a cutout test with the computer, and then maybe open the valve cover, take a look in there. And sometimes it's just a rub-through harness. Cat's notorious for that on the C15s. They're notorious if you don't put the zip tie where it tells you to put the zip tie. It rubs through on the valve cover and then causes an injector fault. So if you just go in there with the computer, the injector shot.
Yeah. Change the injector, doesn't fix the problem.
Doesn't fix the problem, then you look like you don't know what you're doing because you didn't open the valve cover and go, all it needed was a zip tie.
That's awesome.
To keep it from rubbing.
Yeah.
So a 30-cent fix versus, the injector fix. So
yeah. And that's experience. That's wisdom, right? You hope to be able to pass that stuff on. Like that bit of information you just said there, hopefully someone listening will learn from that and save themselves a lot of time and a lot of frustration.
Yeah. Or I had a bugger up once in a 60 series. No, not a 60 series, but a DTAC. No, DD15. So customer complaint, coolant in the oil, fine. Pull the head off. Yeah, crack liner, no big deal. Put the liners back together. Go to fire up the engine. Runs for 30 seconds. Dies. Can't get it running again. So I phoned one of the people I went to school with. She is actually a technician, and now she's a service manager. And she says, "Did you soak your injectors in this particular fluid that we have?" I said, "No." She said, "They're all done." So
wow.
It cost me a few dollars.
Yeah. Wow.
Because the old school thing, you pull the injectors out and you just keep them clean, put them on a bench somewhere, and it's all good, right? But I guess Detroit's a little bit different. And if I'd read the book, I would have known. Don't assume.
Yeah. So if the Tekamo film crew came to you one day to show the type of stuff that you do, I would break it into tank inspections, common issues, common failure points. Would there be any way of safely getting inside of the tank to be able to show that? Or is that a difficult thing?
Depending on the tank.
Okay.
As long as they're steamed and cleaned.
Okay.
Like there's no issue there. And it's proper ventilation.
Yeah.
No issue. No
Okay.
issue whatsoever.
Yeah.
We have a lift in the shop here, so we use a lift to get up into the tank, so you're not climbing up and down the ladders.
Yeah.
It makes it easy and safe, right?
I think that would be really cool to show the process, to show the inspection process, number one, common failed points, and then go inside the tank. And I mean, that was probably where the inspection would take place. Can you ever do inspections from outside the tank? Obviously, if there's a hole,
Well,
you'll see it, right?
well, yeah. So we do a pressure inspection, and then we visually inspect the outside of the tank, of
Okay.
course.
Okay.
And that is one type of inspection, and the other type is an internal inspection, which yes, we go inside the
Okay.
tank and confirm that everything's as it should be. We're checking for pitting, we're checking for cracks, we're checking for, because there's baffles inside the tank. There's pieces that control the fluid movement inside the tank. Because if you just had a bare barrel inside the tank and that fluid sloshes forward, obviously that creates quite a, it's just some of these tanks got 30 cubes in them. That's
Yeah.
30,000 liters of fluid
Wow.
moving forward. That's not exactly what you want to have happen at a stop sign.
Yeah. Yes.
And they can, and I've seen it, they can roll over sitting still.
Wow.
A guy comes in too hot in the corner, stops, and 2 seconds later the tank rolls over.
Wow. Yeah.
Just does that fluid movement.
Yeah.
Right?
And so on a repair, let's say, is there different levels of repairs? I'm just trying to get an idea. If the guys were there to go see you, they go film with you, I think what you do is pretty cool. I think it would be really neat. I've never talked to anyone who does this kind of stuff. We're in contact with a company who does large steel structure inspections. That's kind of cool, like tower cranes and any sort of thing like that.
Oh, that would be really neat.
Yeah.
Power cranes, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what you do, I think it would be cool just to see the process because, I mean, everyone uses fuel, presumably, even if they think they don't. And so it's a pretty important part of the economy. And I'm just trying
I think it would help demystify some of the, you go to the pump and you fill up your car and you walk away and whatever, your car's full. You pay your money and it's on, right?
Yeah.
Where does it come from?
Yeah.
Like it's no different than buying your steak at the store, right? Oh, that's great. You bought the steak at the store, but where does it come from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How long would a basic repair take? Like if we were to film or try to film that, I know it'd probably be challenging.
I could do a piping repair, like an internal piping repair. It takes about 2 to 4 hours.
Okay. That would be really cool.
Short one. Yeah, that's a short repair. Like we've had tanks in here for a month.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be challenging.
They're
Thinking if we
thundered
came
on
for a
the
couple
inside.
days, yeah. It would be cool to see you on the tractor too, or whatever else you do in that time of year.
Yeah, that's come and gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably a short window, right?
Very. It's about 6 weeks in the summer.
Wow.
It's done with. But it's cool up here right now. We got the harvesters running like a combine.
Yeah.
So they're running right now, combining and doing stuff. So that's kind of a neat. Some fields have 2, 3, 4 combines in them.
Wow.
So it gets to be quite a little. It's a neat thing. Like I consider it average, but I can remember when I first came here. Like I'm from New Brunswick originally.
Okay.
When I first came here, that was something pretty cool to see. Some great big combines running across.
They're huge, right?
They're massive.
Yeah.
Massive. Some of these 800 horse guys crank them up. They need the power, right? So they crank them up to 800 horse and give her.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then the volumes are phenomenal. Like the machinery, the from 20 or 30 years ago, it doesn't even hold a candle to what these machines do now.
It's incredible. I saw a compilation video, I forget on what, YouTube or whatever, showing the different harvesting methods, different machines. It's absolutely incredible. For small harvesting of like radishes or whatever, just various different ones. It's incredible, the complexity. Like you look at an excavator, and even if you put a complicated attachment on like a tilt rotator bucket, or what's the most complicated thing, a hammer, whatever attachments that they have. But you look at these farm agriculture attachments, they're absolutely incredible. I wouldn't want to be repairing them. That's for sure.
Well, and farming's kind of, and I do give farm mechanics that. Like people think, oh, it's a farm mechanic, he's beating stuff with a sledgehammer and a crescent wrench. Those days are done. It is very, very tech savvy stuff now. They have setups now where the combine goes into the field. So farmer sets the combine and I'm just the helper. So I roll in the combine, press a sync button. It'll set a pattern, set my sieves, set everything to what he's set at. And I let go of the steering wheel and it does its own thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
The grain cart guy, so he hauls the grain off the combine to the truck because we don't want the trucks going in the field.
Yeah.
Or whether it's too wet, soil compaction, whatever. He pulls up beside the combine, presses a button, and it matches the speed. You let
Wow.
go of the steering wheel. The
Wow.
computers take over on some of them, right? Like not all, but
Yeah.
that technology is here.
Yeah.
It's
that's incredible.
When it works, it's fantastic.
Yep.
But it does come with its own set of little hiccups. You don't get nothing for nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, man. Ben, that was a good chat. Thanks a lot for your time.
You betcha.
Do you have any questions to finish it up? I guess we went over a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did. We did cover a few things. I think as soon as I let you go here, I'm going to jump on my bike and go for a little cruise. And
right on. Have fun.
Enjoy the few last evenings that we have up here in the north before it gets 40 below.
And dark, right?
Well, it doesn't ever quite get dark here. That's a funny thing.
Really?
That's a funny thing. You can drive down the highway here in January and turn your lights off and see the road.
Wow. Moonlight. And flat. Flat.
Yeah, like I was talking about Creston. When it's dark in Creston, it's pitch black.
Yeah.
Like you cannot see nothing.
Yeah.
Up here, that's not quite this common. You can always kind of sort of see where you're going.
Yeah.
Like you don't need a flashlight to walk from the shop to the house.
Wow. That's cool.
But it gets cold.
Yep. 40 below.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, we don't deal with snakes and critters, but we got 40 below.
Yep. Yeah. So anyone listening to the podcast will probably be able to see you in the near future. To people that are listening, we'd love to hear feedback. If there's any follow-up questions for Ben Stewart or whatever for us, let us know. You can comment on this video if you're listening on YouTube. Reach out to us directly, media@tekamohd.com. Thank you very much for your time. We'll definitely be in touch.
No problem. Give me a shout anytime.
Okay, man.